Congressman Schiff used Secretary Rubio's own words from 2023 to corner him on a single question. Does the same standard apply to everyone, or only when it's politically convenient? Let's watch.
First, Secretary Rubio's earlier testimony referenced the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, as a private citizen. But in President Trump's own words, Kushner is an envoy of peace alongside Steve Witkoff. So I ask unanimous consent to submit for the record a political article from February 19th detailing the president's announcement, which makes clear Kushner is more than a private citizen.
It's ordered.
Thank you. Secretary Rubio, as a senator back in 2023, referencing Hunter Biden, you said, quote, if his last name wasn't Biden, there's no way in the world that he would have made the millions of dollars he made. You also said we can't abandon common sense when someone profits from a family member in power. Is it fair to say that you agree that it's wrong for elected officials and their families to profit from positions of power?
To use government service to make money, yeah, of course.
Great. I appreciate that, and I share that sentiment with you, sir. I want to revisit some of the details that were brought up earlier and put into the record about the president's own stock transactions, a form which he filed that shows he completed more than 3,700 stock transactions in just the first 3 months of this year alone. The president bought hundreds of thousands of dollars in Palantir stock shortly before he publicly praised the company on his social media site. As if the name drop itself wasn't enough, he included the company's ticker symbol for good measure, hardly subtle to me. On March 23rd, after nearly a month of war with Iran, the president said talks were, quote, very good and productive, and extended his deadline for a deal by 5 days. Oil prices dropped and energy stocks fell while Trump bought shares in companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, and other firms positioned to benefit if the war continued, which it did at the president's direction. He bought a dip that he created. Then there's NVIDIA. The president bought as much as $1 million in stock just 1 week before the Commerce Department formally approved the sale of NVIDIA chips to China. 1 week. He bought up to $5 million more in NVIDIA stock in February, right before the company announced a major chip deal with Meta. It's pretty good luck if you ask me. If that's not bad enough, the president's son struck a multi-billion-dollar crypto deal with a UAE state-backed firm. After the deal, the administration reversed AI chip restrictions, approving transfers of sensitive technology to another UAE-related entity, chaired by the very same royal family figure involved with the deal with his son. That seems like hardly a coincidence to me, and indeed, it is self-enrichment tied directly to the president's foreign policy agenda, and it's how the president's net worth has grown by over $4 billion since he started this term. As the president gets rich, his wars and tariffs are crushing hardworking American families. And I think the American people see through the BS. This is the most corrupt administration in American history. So, Secretary Rubio, earlier today you said you didn't know the facts about the president's financial dealings. I'm happy to share them if you want to see it specifically, but having run through that, now that you do know, would you agree? And do you have concerns about the fact this administration is in fact profiting from their position of power?
Well, first of all, what I said is the information you guys were putting up, including on this board, first, that's not in my purview as in the Department of State, and these are things you're producing. I don't know if they're accurate or not, but let me just say this. I've been in every foreign policy and national security meeting for the most part this administration has had. Not once, not a single time have I ever seen even the hint or the indication that any of the decisions being made are for the financial gain of anyone in the administration. Those are my observations. That's what I can speak to. I have not once seen a directive on our foreign policy or our national security policy that in any way indicates that it's being done to the benefit of anyone personally. That's what I've seen as a firsthand witness, and that's what I can testify to today.
With all due respect, Mr. Secretary, I may have to get you a new pair of glasses because the facts are right in front of you, and it seems like malpractice for the Secretary of State to not be able to see this president and his family enriching themselves by billions of dollars. So the only thing I can, from my perspective—
No one has ever said in a meeting, let's go do this because it's going to help me make money.
Of course he's not going to say that.
But not even hint at it. Not even hint at it, not even, on the contrary.
Don't have to hint at it. The facts speak for themselves, sir. They're in the record. They're in the forms the president put forward himself. It's in the billions of dollars he has put in his pocket. It is the timing of the deals and the announcements, and the only thing I can see is, my question to you as I conclude my time, Mr. Secretary, is what's changed in your perspective? Is it the party affiliation of the president, or is it your own political ambitions?
I already told you at the outset, people don't make, and I've seen the president say this, people should not be making money off of their government service. He said that repeatedly. I've heard him say that, but not once. I want to reiterate this. There has not been a single decision that's been made that I have witnessed or been a part of that in any way indicate to me or to any reasonable mind that this was linked to some financial agreement or arrangement.
I think the facts clearly are differently, and I hope you take a look at them. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Let's break down a tense exchange between Congressman Johnny Olszewski and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. At its core, it was about a single idea: consistency. Olszewski used the Secretary's own past words to ask whether the standard he once set for one family still applies today. What followed was a sharp back and forth about ethics, evidence, and what a witness can and cannot speak to. Olszewski began with a quote. Back in 2023, as a senator, Rubio spoke about Hunter Biden and said that if his last name were different, he never would have made the money he made. He added that we cannot abandon common sense when someone profits from a family member in power. Olszewski read those words back to him and asked a simple question. And the secretary agreed with the principle. Olszewski asked whether it is wrong for elected officials and their families to use government service to make money. Rubio's answer was direct. Yeah, of course. With that, both men were on record agreeing that the standard should apply to everyone. The disagreement was about what comes next. From there, Olszewski laid out his case. He argued that the same scrutiny Rubio once applied to one family should apply to the current administration. He pointed to a series of financial transactions and timing that, in his view, raised questions. And he asked the secretary, now that he had heard it, whether he shared any concern. Here the exchange split in two. Olszewski's position was that the pattern he described amounts to self-enrichment tied to public office. The secretary's response was that none of this falls within his purview at the State Department and that he could not verify whether the figures being shown were even accurate. The secretary then made his central point, and he made it more than once. He said that he has sat in nearly every foreign policy and national security meeting of this administration. And in all of them, he said, he has never once seen even a hint that a decision was being made for anyone's financial gain. That, he said, is what he can testify to as a first-hand witness. And that is the real divide in this exchange. Olszewski argued that you do not need a confession, that the timing and the records speak for themselves. Rubio argued that as the person in the room, he has seen no such thing. Both can be sincere, and that is exactly why the question is so difficult to settle in a single hearing. Strip it down and a few questions remain open. First, are the transactions and timing Olszewski described actually connected to policy or simply coincidental? Second, who is positioned to verify them if not the State Department? And third, what standard should apply, and should it apply the same way to every administration? Those questions did not get resolved. Follow the shape of it. First, Olszewski quotes Rubio's own words and gets him to agree on the principle. Then, he lays out the financial pattern he says raises concern. And finally, the secretary responds that he has witnessed nothing of the kind. Agreement on the principle, disagreement on the facts. In a way, the two men were arguing about proof itself. For Olszewski, the public record and the timing are the proof. For Rubio, proof means a decision he personally watched being made for the wrong reason, and he says he never saw one. They were not just disagreeing on the answer, they were disagreeing on what counts as evidence. At one point, the exchange turned pointed. When the secretary said no one ever announced a decision was meant to make money, Olszewski cut in with a line that captured his whole argument. And as his time ran out, Olszewski put one last question to the secretary. He asked what had changed in Rubio's perspective since 2023. Was it the party of the president now in office or something else? It was a direct challenge to the consistency of the standard, and it was where he chose to end. The secretary closed by repeating his position. He said the president himself has stated that people should not make money off government service, and he insisted once more that he has witnessed no decision linked to any financial arrangement. He urged the committee to look at the facts and yielded the floor. Step back and one number frames the stakes. 0. That is how many decisions the secretary said he personally witnessed being made for financial gain. Whether you find that reassuring or insufficient depends on whether you think a witness in the room is the right test or whether the public record should speak for itself. So where does this leave us with an old and simple test? A standard is only a standard if it applies to everyone, no matter their name or their party. Olszewski argued that test is not being met. Rubio argued that he has seen nothing to suggest it is being broken. You can decide which case you find more convincing. What happens next depends on whether the records get a closer look and whether anyone with the authority to verify them does. Either way, this exchange put the question of consistency squarely on the record. That is our breakdown. Stay with us.